On today's video, I'm going to be showing you how to achieve this in just 20 minutes, no airbrush, just dry brushing. Enjoy. So in today's video where we're painting this, which looks pretty incredible, we're talking a lot about transparency. We're going to be using fluorescent paints, and you can use any brand of paints here. You could swap these colours out, you could do an orange version of this, but the theory is going to stay the same. So we're talking a lot about paints that are opaque, paints that are transparent, and we've put a little bit more of education or theory in at the start. You can just skip it if you want and go straight through to the tutorial, but if it's useful, just let us know if you like more of the educational type of thing. So tune in. The result is fantastic. We get asked about these a lot. It's really effective and people won't believe that it's not airbrushed, but it really isn't. It's just a dry brush, 7 paints and a little bit of patience.
Hi there, so what we've got here is the colours we're intending and doing in our process, and what we're going to be doing is going from 3 opaque paints to 3 more transparent paints and using a white. The reason I've separated the two and put a question mark in the middle is you basically have the option to repeat this step here, the final 3 steps, as many times as you want, and the more times you repeat it and the higher proportion of the fluorescence you use or the white you use, the brighter result you'll get. So this is one where we've only done it a couple of times and used a little bit less of the fluorescence and the white steps, and this is one where we've done it more. You can change those according to taste, but I just thought rather than showing you one way to do it, I'd talk about the process behind it. So these opaque paints, the first 3 that are following after basing, they will cover really easily. They're deep, they're gorgeous, they're saturated, and they will cover over black very easily. It's why I've chosen them, and I'm starting from a black base. These ones here, the transparent ones, they don't cover very easily at all. Think of them as filters. So if you put it over a dark paint, it's barely going to influence it, and if you put it over a light paint, that is going to allow it to, that light paint will allow it to be much more punchy and bright. So that's why we're going to be adding the white back into it to make things work more easily. You can mix white with either of these fluorescents and it will make it kind of bite or grip onto your model much more easily. So you can go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 all the way through, and you can repeat stages 4 to 7 as many times as you want to achieve a greater result. So let's try and put that into practice now and see how it goes. So our first stage is possible with a spray can or an airbrush, but I actually think in this situation it's better to do it with a brush because of picking out textures and the raised areas. So I'm putting down a quick pre-shade just of white, doesn't matter what white you use, and this is there to make sure that whatever goes down on top of it comes out as bright as possible. We're looking for a pretty punchy final effect, as I've said in the introduction, and a really good way to get that without having white in the recesses, which can cause issues if it shows through in the final paint job if you can't reach it with your dry brushing in the following stages, is to do all your stages with dry brushing. So we're going to pick out all the bits that we want to specifically in a top to bottom sense or left to right sense, which is how we're going to be painting them, but generally speaking the important part is to have a rough stipple where the top is far brighter than the bottom. So as per our plan at the beginning, we're just going to be putting an almost rainbow of our colour selection up and down this wall, and that's going to be done by putting down the purple, then the blue, then the green in bands. So this is stippling. We're trying to get pretty much every single section of this. If you can't reach the deepest recesses, don't worry about that, but the important thing is to make sure that it's done not too thick. You don't want to build up unnecessary texture, and you take your time, but it's not a delicate stage of things at all. Each stage is going to fade into the next. So the next stage, we're bringing our blue, which is Huldra blue from scale 75 into the equation. Each one of our mixes following is going to be a mix. We're not using the colours particularly pure. We want there to be a nice natural transition between them. This blue is very, very strong. So if you're looking to get an effect that looks like a 50-50 mix between the blue and pretty much any purple I can think of, whether you're using these exact colours or you're dipping into some Games Workshop colours or whatever, you're probably going to have to use 75% purple and 25% blue just to make it look like it is 50-50. It's an extremely potent colour, but that makes it useful for a lot of reasons. So again, we're just dipping these bands, and this is why it doesn't make sense to do this pre-shading down low, because whatever we did we would colour over anyway. So just in the same fashion as our previous steps, we're bringing in Boreal Tree Green from Scale Colour. Going to mix that with our blue. which still has a tint of our purple, and this is why it's nice to do it on a palette. And we're still stippling. This is where we start seeing the real powerful transitions, and that kind of, we begin to see the hint of that kind of like beautiful magical effect, which is what we get by transitioning from something very different into something completely different, which is going from a purple to a blue and then jumping suddenly into the green. So again, it's just a band of colour here all the way across, working our way up to about halfway up the piece now, and we're going to start bringing in our lighter colours following this. So I'm going to go for a mix that's pretty much all the green. We've still got the previous colours on the brush though. And now we can start introducing the really light ones. So this is the first step with the green, where we start working our way down onto our previous stages. And we need to lay some type of foundation, because if we jump straight from the really bright colours onto this purple base layer, it's going to look a little bit nuts. So this soft but still significant coat of the green, mainly from above, because we want to be suggesting that things are getting brighter from the top down. But we can go left and right on these vertical details, otherwise we just won't catch the edges in as nice a way. That's what we're going for, and this is also that when we do get to a final result, we can pick out details like this with that lovely green glow. So this is the point, as I mentioned, where we're starting to bring our brighter colours in. And as I mentioned in the intro, these fluorescent colours, they don't have particularly fantastic coverage, so in order to get them to grip onto something, you've got to put a fair bit of effort into making sure that it can grasp it. So we're going to be pulling in the ice yellow, and that's going to help it kind of bite onto it. Again, we're doing just the normal stippling as we go across, but as you'll notice, it's a significant jump up in terms of the brightness of the colour that we've got here. And then we can hop into adding our yellow into that mix. I tend to work from stripes because it lets you pull a little bit from the very end of it to make sure that you've not got too much going on at one time, so it's just really nice for control on the palette. We're doing this, and then as with the previous stages, we want to start working our way down the model as well, top to bottom, especially on the details like the bricks. Which will really benefit from having just the top edges caught and not the bottom edges. It's a very nice final effect. So at this point, we've got our yellow and our green, both which are fluorescent. Pull in a little bit of the ice yellow, and then I'm also going to add in a little bit of white. This looked like quite a big jump up, but we've got dry brushing as well as stippling to kind of unlock a natural transition very shortly. So I'm going to get this pretty much all over apart from the very top of the piece. And another thing that we have available is if you stipple this at 45 degrees, what you'll have is any area that's got a little lip, you're not going to hit. If you're going at it, you'll hit all areas of that. If you're going at 45 degrees, you'll leave a little shadow there, which will look nice and natural. So you'll see me doing that throughout this. And then carefully, once we've removed quite a bit from our brush, up top where it's not going to cause any issues, if we go a little bit heavy-handed, we can work our way down the piece. Taking our time a bit more now, this is where you'll really reap the benefits of a little bit of care. We can work our way down the piece and get these ghostly green highlights on top of this purple blue and pushing through the transitions that we've got. So suddenly things will start looking a lot more smooth and a lot higher quality, even though it's just one step. To take time, work your way around it, and then the next stage is even more yellow, even more white. Still using the same brush, we want to keep the previous stages on. We might jump onto a clean one for any particularly bright ones, but that kind of color coherency is a bonus that we get if we continue using the same one throughout until the final steps. The fluorescent paints take a lot longer to dry, they're more gel-like, so be aware when you're working that you might need to leave some time between stages so you don't end up knocking off your previous stage's work when you are doing the dry brushing. It's not so much of an issue if it's areas where you've done light dry brushing on, but if you've done a stipple, then you're going to be putting down a thicker amount of paint there, so just be mindful of that. And if you need to give it a hair dry or put it to the side for 5 minutes, then you should absolutely be willing to do that, because it'll make sure that you don't have any mistakes in your final job. We're going with a lot more care than we are at the top at the bottom, because we don't want to cover up too much of that lovely deep purple, and we want to be only catching the edges, but we can really start seeing this coming into play now and becoming the striking final result that we're going after. So at this point our wall is really beginning to take shape, and it's just a matter of repeating those steps that we outlined in the initial part of the video. So swap brush, or you can give yours a good clean. I've also allowed it to dry for a little bit because it was getting slightly tacky. I want to have full control over what's happening here, and I'm taking a bit of the yellow, a bit of the green, a bit of the previous green, and some ice yellow, and I'm going to start doing what are the first of the much brighter stages. So as I mentioned before, we can use stippling from 45 degrees as a way just to hit the upward facing part slightly more, or we can go in there and then fade it with careful application down the bricks. As long as you haven't got too much on your brush, you don't need to be too worried about doing anything here that's going to go wrong, because it's quite hard to get a lot of paint to leave your brush in situations like this, unless it is on an edge, in which case we're absolutely happy with hitting any of those edges. So we'll repeat this a couple of times to build up those layers, and we need to make sure, if you do involve white, just to use a little. But we need to make real sure that when we take it down here, this is the single most important bit so we don't make a mistake, is to start at the top. You can start on the very top, because obviously that's going to be by far the brightest section, to get rid of your paint higher up on the model or on your texture palette or whatever before working your way downwards, and that is going to ensure that you don't do anything too heavy-handed down here, and you get a nice kind of just picking out the edges, especially at the bottom, which is where we'll get a really nice contrast between the purple at the bottom and then the lighter colours at the top. So take your time, bit by bit, and actually it should take shape pretty fast in front of your eyes in terms of exactly what we're looking to achieve here with this effect. So this is really starting to take shape in front of our eyes, and now's the stage where we can bring in more white. If you do bring in too much white and you do anything that is too bright, as long as it's not a big smudge or something, that's not a worry, because we can cover over it with our fluorescent paints, and then we'll just have a really bright section of those. So don't worry too much, it's quite an organic technique. You're going backwards and forwards, and anything you do, as long as it's not done with a big thick amount of paint, can be covered up quite easily, or just used as a filter basically to affect your following stages, which is exactly what we're doing here. So pulling a bit of white in. This is going to be a bit desaturated, it's not going to be vibrant even if it is bright, but anything we put down here, this is going to mean that if it's touched by that bright yellow green that we're going to be mixing up shortly, that's going to really jump out. So it's a way to make these colours behave how they look when they're on your palette, but get them to do exactly that when they're on your model. So I'm going to be concentrating on the tops of arches. Little details like these comets, I want to make sure the top bits of them are hit. Anything that is a vertical section, I'm going to really carefully pick out like this. Go all over the model, and you're just putting down a foundation layer for your bright stuff to go on top of. So when we jump through to our mix involving our brighter colours, green, yellow, I'm only going to take a tiny bit of the ice yellow because I want this to be really bright. When we put this down here, as you can see, it sticks, it grips instantly, and you pretty much instantaneously get that super vibrant effect, which is the final 2 or 3 steps of this are really what makes it work. And you find that with a lot of dry brushing, miniature painting in general actually. Any of these sections like this, they feel a bit too dark. This mix isn't not crazy strong, so you can go in there and you can kind of scuff it or smudge it and block those areas in. But at this stage you can repeat this as much as you want. So if you wanted to go in numerous times, you wanted to go in and make this look really crazy, or have the very tops look absolutely like eye-bleedingly bright, you could. It's within your control. You just do the step with a white and then repeat this, and you can do that probably you're going to build up paint because it's a physical technique, it is dry brushing, but you could probably do it 3 or 4 times without any overly detrimental effect to your model if you really want to ramp things up. And then another thing is these edges are going to be very bright, so to make them so they don't stand out too much, just make sure that you don't neglect the top of your model, because that's where we've chosen it to be a top-down light source, whatever we're imagining, whether it's from a crazy green moon or something like that. So we want the top parts of the model to really reflect that, so they don't stand out as looking incorrect. So we're pretty much there, that's it. As I've said, you could repeat that step with the white as much as you wanted, and this is a technique that isn't just reserved for terrain. We've done a great unclean one in this fashion. You could do luminous skin, and you could change this for an orange set of fluorescents, a blue set, whatever it is. That's a final fantastic result, really effective, and it's fast as well, and you can get a very nice result for any tabletop in this fashion.
So that's been a huge success. It's a really solid technique, and if you're going to take anything away, what I'd like people to think about are having a blended stipple base coat. We have it in layers like purple, blue, green, brighter, and then that dry brush highlight over the top. It just makes it so that whatever is underneath, it will end up looking extremely smooth in the final result, even if it wasn't too smooth when we were doing it. Like some of you may have thought in the first couple of stages, what is he doing? But the final result looks brilliant. So if you've got a really bold highlight over the top of something, it makes it very hard for the eyes to distinguish what is going underneath. And all they're going to see is that it was purple here, it was blue there, it was green there, it was super light yellow there, and the eyes will just fill in the gaps. That becomes a smoother transition just because they're concentrating on the really punchy stuff that jumps out, like these vertical lines. I'd encourage people to try this on terrain. It's brilliant. It's a really good way to let go a little bit and probably not care quite so much about the end result. If you've enjoyed the video, give us a like, subscribe, and if you've got any suggestions or queries or whatever, pop them in the comments below. If you want to know how to do this with different colour paints, if you'd like to suggest me trying it on a different model or trying it on anything like that, then do let us know, and tune in for the next video.